Let's go! What time is it? Gator! It's gonna be a football game tonight now, no doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
And the Ohio State Buckeyes are the first national champions of the playoff era.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to football.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to another Football to Football, and yes, I realize most people probably know we didn't do a preview podcast, which is the first podcast we missed in a while, but sometimes the internet and cable companies decide to have issues, mainly mine. So, yeah, I basically had an outage for most of Friday and Saturday, and we couldn't do it, and then Saturday rolled around, it was like, who cares at that point? There's a game at 9:30 in the morning on Sunday. No one's going to listen to it. So, yeah. So at least we're here doing NFL Week 8 and recapping that. Of course, we'll do a little post-game for Carolina and Indianapolis and that crazy freaking game that happened that went all the way to overtime. And then Randy will talk about the big things in college football Week 9. And then we'll do our player of the week and the power rankings and all that stuff. So... and we should also congratulate the Kansas City Royals for winning their first World Series since 1985, and Randy getting that right. So, but how was everybody's Halloween?
My Halloween weekend was a lot better than any NFL player with any talent who is now on the IR, because they all are.
Dress up as anybody, or?
Yeah, I was the Riddler. Oh.
Sweet. You didn't take a Batmobile for a spin like Russell Wilson, huh?
That is classified.
So, Gary?
Man, I had a pretty good Halloween and just enjoyed myself. Didn't do the dressing up thing myself. I considered going as... someone like E.J. Manuel or someone like that, a ghost that no one ever remembers. But, I just didn't really do it, but I had a great time anyway, and it was a good weekend.
Well, I think I was probably better that you didn't. I don't know if you would have wanted to wear the paint and all that stuff would have required. So, I worked 9 hours. My kid did get to do something. So that's good. At least she got to enjoy herself. But, yeah. So, that's the basis of our Halloweens there. But, so let's get into this. If, most people probably didn't listen to Gary and I do our Rabble, which basically turned into us doing the end of the game because it went to overtime. But, it was Carolina controlling most of the time. And then Indianapolis basically... Andrew Luck doing the thing he's been doing lately is just kind of coming back towards the end, and this time he's actually able to get the game tied up, and then unfortunately he threw the interception that led to the team losing at the end, with Graham Gano hitting a big 52-yard field goal to get the Panthers the win and are still undefeated. You think Carolina is now, especially after the Packers lost, the premier team in the NFC? Or would you still say that's the Packers, Randy?
No, I think I would still probably put Carolina behind the Packers and maybe even behind the Cardinals at this point. It's still a great story that they're 7-0 and completely playing great. That defense is nothing to be messed with. But I think today kind of showed that, their offense still is not clicking, and it's so much on the defense that they get worn out. I mean, they completely dominated the Colts for basically 3 quarters, but once the fourth quarter rolled around, they got tired, and Andrew Luck was finally able to get something going. So I think if they want to be a premier team, they got to figure a little bit out more on offense.
Well, Gary, I kind of asked you this question before already, and you said it was Carolina. Why do you think differently than Randy?
I just think that Carolina right now has this situation where their defense is, playing great. But I look at the way that they're playing on offense, and I look at the fact that, Green Bay is playing excellent, and they're just doing their thing. And I think both these teams are not far apart. And in fact, like I said earlier, I feel like these teams are almost mirror images of each other, except it's definitely Green Bay has the advantage of wide receiver. But on the other hand, running game wise, I think Carolina has the complete control of this thing. So they're very, very similar, just with a few different styles and skill sets. But I don't know. I just think that looking at this, adversity is the big thing for me. And when Green Bay was faced with a team that was equal or pretty close to them, they weren't able to match up to the adversity. I think that Carolina has matched up with the adversity, and tonight's one of those games where they matched up with adversity and they won. So I think you got to give Carolina a slight edge, but these teams are so close it's hard to judge.
Well, Gary, do you take more positives out of this loss for Indy or more negatives? I mean, they were pretty bad for 3 quarters, namely Andrew Luck. And then it all turned around, I guess you could say, when it mattered in the fourth quarter. Randy kind of pointed out they're taking advantage of a tired Carolina defense, even though it was a Luke Kuechly drop at the end that pretty much determined things getting into overtime. Do you think this is Andrew Luck kind of getting back into his old ways, or are we just going to see more of this kind of helter-skelter Andrew Luck throughout the season?
It's one game here that, basically Indianapolis looks like old Indianapolis, and that's kind of funny. And I can see where Randy's coming from on the defense being tired for Carolina, because they were on the field quite a while. But I do think that you got to take some positives out of the way Andrew Luck played. I think that he was able to get things taken care of compared to what he's done in the past. He's just kind of looked more like his old self. Even, with the way he ran the ball, when, he didn't have to. He could just throw the ball away or something. He kind of is making things happen. So, I look at it this way. I think that there are some positive things you can take out of this and move forward. Now, will they be the same team next week? We kind of talked about that on the Rabble, and I don't know that. I don't know that for a fact at all. But right now, I think I'm leaning towards some positive things here because they show that defensively they're not just going to fall apart if they can actually fall into the range of skill level they play tonight.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Colts is they're going to face an equally or even tougher defense on Sunday with the Broncos. And if the Panthers shut them down, I can't imagine the Broncos aren't going to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be rough for the Colts. And then, on the Panthers side, they had the Packers coming in, and, they have a blueprint right there with the Broncos doing what they did. And Panthers probably feel that they have a defense that's equally as good and could do the same. But we'll have to see when we get to that on the Sunday at 1 o'clock. But let's move on to talking about the rest of those Week 8 games. Of course, we didn't talk about the Thursday night game, but really it was a Patriots blowout, plain and simple. There's really not a whole lot to grasp from that other than the fact that Dan Campbell's honeymoon is over, and now it can either be one of those where you face. Do you think that there's something to say for the Dolphins there, RJ? Was it just one of those cases where they played crappy competition, or are they possibly that good and they just happen to face one of the best teams in the NFL, Randy?
Listen, you're there. I say it it seems like every Monday I'm a broken record, but road team on a Thursday night. They played a way superior team and came in with less time to prepare and completely got outmatched. I mean, you kind of have to just find the middle ground. They're not as bad as they showed on Thursday, but they're not as dominant as they looked against underclass teams like Houston and Tennessee. So Miami kind of falls right there in the middle, which is fine, and it's a possible wild card team. So, I mean, they got to take that. But, yeah, Thursday was ugly.
Well, moving from Thursday, we did have a London game that was also very, very ugly. Mainly for a Detroit Lions team that just looked all kinds of bad. Stafford wound up getting sacked about 6 times. I don't know if they're really... They have to be close to Russell Wilson's number of sacks at this point. Stafford has just been drilled constantly and constantly over and over. And, you know, they fire... I mean, obviously this is the first week with the new offensive coordinator and everything. And the weird thing was they were in London that whole week, and it seemed like it didn't matter because the Chiefs came in on Thursday night like it was no big deal, and they just ran them over every which way. Alex Smith ran for a freaking 50-yarder at one point. That's ridiculous. That's just... if you can't stop Alex Smith from running, they certainly were going to stop Charkandrick West from running, who almost got 100 yards himself. I mean, are the Chiefs? Do you think that? And what are they legit now? Now that we you know, you kind of said it last week, but now that we know for sure, West seems like he's going to do okay replacing Jamal Charles. Do you think it's just now they're kind of getting in the stride, and this is the Chiefs we were supposed to see? Or was it just the Lions are just that bad? What do you think, Gary?
You know, I think that let's be honest, the Lions are not the team right now that they once were offensively, and we've seen this all year long, and I think you just got a vision of really what they are. It's just sad to say. I think the Kansas City actually had a lot of momentum going into this year. I think people, you know, had picked them to do well. Of course, you know, Randy that was his Super Bowl pick. And, you know, I could actually believe it at the beginning of the year because of the talent that they had on the team. The defense has got some great names. The offense had, you know, big stars like Macklin and, of course, Jamal Charles and Kelsey. These are players that actually can make things happen. But over time, this team just kind of stumbled and had some issues going. So then, you know, injury bug hit. They just did not do everything that they wanted to do, and they kind of looked like a lower tier team. But I think in this game you saw Kansas City show that they can be a good team if they can get everything together. But I think this is more of a product of Detroit just being bad.
Yeah, fair. I mean, and speaking of them being bad, I mean, I've heard people talking about if maybe the Lions need to think about if it continues like this, do you do something with Stafford? Do you move him? Is it all answered with firing Jim Caldwell too? I mean, is there anything that can be done to maybe turn this season around for the Lions at all? Just do you think more time with the coordinator might help something? It just seemed like nothing was working until it just didn't matter anymore. It was already out of hands there, Randy.
No, listen, this season is completely over. There's nothing you can do to save it. It's time to implode the entire thing. You've had many years of the Stafford to Calvin Johnson connection. It's just not enough. And now with no running game and the offensive line is terrible, and it's just a mess now. So it is now time to implode the whole thing and rebuild and try again.
Well, you know, something that we're talking about one quarterback. Well, we had another quarterback make his return to Pittsburgh, and Ben Roethlisberger, and as soon as he gets on the field, 25 minutes later, they lose Le'Veon Bell for the season, and that team did not look the same after that. The Bengals weren't having that great of a game, to be honest. I mean, Andy Dalton probably had his worst game. of the whole season there, but he led the team down the field, and the Bengals wound up winning and are now 7-0. I don't think a lot of people thought they were going to get this far. How is this division over now? Have the Bengals sewn it up, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're 3 games up on Pittsburgh, like 3.5 games up on Pittsburgh, really. 5.5 games on anyone else. I mean, completely over. I mean, they are the better team. They're the more complete team. But this game in itself was completely weird to me. I mean, it was the return of Big Ben, and you're thinking maybe it was going to be a shootout and get things just crazy back and forth. And, you know, Pittsburgh gets that touchdown on the first drive, and you're like, here we go. And then everything just stopped. I mean, I know the Le'Veon Bell injury was a big factor, but it wasn't like D'Angelo Williams sucked. I mean, he definitely ran the ball really well. It was just a defensive battle, a lot of turnovers, just, you know, your classic Cincinnati-Pittsburgh matchup, and Cincinnati came out on top, just, again, because they're the more complete team.
Well, Gary, if you're the Steelers, you had to already deal with Le'Veon Bell being out earlier in the year, and you know D'Angelo Williams can run. You have your quarterback as long as he's healthy. You still have Antonio Brown. I mean, all is not lost for the Steelers. They can certainly just take this as, okay, we're playing the best team in our division. We hung tough with them. But how big is this loss of Le'Veon Bell? I mean, how much is this going to affect them going forward?
I think it's a big loss in the fact that they've lost a player that is really a highly productive guy for their team. D'Angelo Williams is great, and he does bring something to the table, but Le'Veon Bell just does so much for your team. Not only that, I mean, really, let's be honest, with D'Angelo Williams there, they can kind of feed off each other, and they can give each other breaks. Now it's really up to D'Angelo Williams to really carry this running game and make sure that it continues going forward. And so, it's always difficult to lose one of your big stars. So I think it will affect the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, will it be a detriment to the offense? I can't say that, because I was very impressed with D'Angelo Williams' work when Le'Veon Bell was suspended. But I mean, I think you do take a hit on offense when you lose a great player like Le'Veon Bell.
Do you think are you in the same boat that the division's over?
Yes, I definitely agree with Randy on that. Cincinnati's just a complete team. They're ready to go to the next level. None of the rest of these teams are ready for that.
All right, so we go from one division that's sewn up to a division two divisions that are possibly wide open, as far as, or at least a wild card race that is wide open, and a division that is still completely wide open after a ridiculous Arena Football League game that was happening between the Giants and Saints. In fact, Brandon and I had to kind of basically call the end of that game, because at least where we were, they weren't showing the Cowboys game until that game ended. And it ended with a field goal with 5 seconds left by Kai Forbath, who was with the Redskins at the start of the season, and a stupid face mask penalty from the Giants basically killed him. But Randy, what else? I mean, what else was there to say about this crazy game?
Arena football is kind of the exact perfect way to describe this game. Just Drew Brees and Eli Manning just could throw it wherever they wanted. There were hints of a running game here and there, but not really. But yeah, it was just, and the thing that got me was just how many different people that both of them were finding. It was just, this game was a blast to watch. During the morning games on Sunday, I had it on the Red Zone, so obviously this game was on there a lot because of all the crazy highlights, but then getting to sit down and watch just how insane this game was from start to finish was just great. I mean, you look at it, there's over 1,000 yards total offense. They had 141 plays, 800 and some yards of passing, just I mean, just airing it out left and right, and then for it to end the way that it did, where it looks like the Giants are going to get the win after a crazy interception that basically bounced off a defender and popped up in the air, and they were able to return it to the Saints then driving back down on a 14-play drive to tie it, to the Giants once again punting it in the field of play so the returner can get them into field goal position, which after a crazy face mask penalty that was called and then wasn't called and then was called again, they kicked the field goal and they win the game. It was just wild and crazy fun. That was just pure enjoyment. But, I mean, I got to start there, Sean. I mean, we've seen this before with the Giants. When are they going to learn that just punt the ball out of bounds late in games?
I don't know. I mean, that punter has had issues himself. There's been games where he looked really bad. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. The thing is, you can tell him to punt out of bounds all you want, but if he actually can't physically do it, then you have another issue there. But they should learn that at some point.
Yeah, just crazy. I mean, the moment that he catches the ball, you're like, well, here we go. I've seen this play before. But I mean, give full credit to the Saints. Again, just ridiculous numbers from Drew Brees. 39 of 50 for 505, 7 touchdowns. He does throw the 2 interceptions, but, I mean, what else can you say? But, Gary, the Saints are starting to roll a little bit. We kind of all wrote them off. They've won 3 in a row against some decent competition. Are they serious playoff contenders now?
You know, they're doing a great job, and they're playing pretty much out of their mind. To me, still, I have my questions. I have my worries about their team now. Are they doing what they need to do to win games? Yes, and I'm very happy for them. I still think, though, that this is an uphill battle. I'm not ready to put them into contendership just yet. I think there's some other teams out there right now that are ahead of them. I don't even know if they can get to their division. But I just don't feel like they can win the division, especially since the fact that they're, in the same division as the Carolina Panthers, who are undefeated right now, and that's a real uphill battle to try to get up to them. So you're talking about wild card. You still got to beat Atlanta in your own division for the wild card. You're talking about Minnesota being another team you're facing and trying to win a wild card battle with. So right now, I'm not there yet. But man, if they can keep winning some games, maybe I will put them there.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting now with the Saints. They're 4-4. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to have to watch it because they've already beat the Falcons once. Now when Carolina comes to play them again with Drew Brees, you'd assume it's going to be a different matchup. And, the Bucs are playing well in that division too. So speaking of the Bucs, they wound up beating the Falcons in another crazy game that even went to overtime. Randy, what did you see there? What got the Bucs to win?
To say the Bucs won this game is kind of the wrong way to put it. I think it was 100% that the Falcons lost this game. I don't know how many times one team can turn the ball over in the red zone, but the Falcons found ways to do it. It just would be the Falcons would drive all the way down and look like they're going to score, and then they'd fumble the ball. And then the Buccaneers would punt it, and then the Falcons would turn it over again, and then the Buccaneers would score. And then the Falcons would drive all the way down, and then they'd fumble the ball. I mean, that was the whole game. It was just, you look at all the stats, Julio Jones, 160 yards, Jacob Tamme himself, 100 yards. Devontae Freeman ran the ball pretty well. To me, the game was completely dominated by the Falcons, but they made the killer mistakes. They had 4 turnovers in this game. Nearly doubling them in total yards, but it didn't matter. But they do a great job of staying composed, and in the fourth quarter, they were able to come back and tie the game up. And then in overtime, I will give full credit to Jameis Winston. He drives down the field, gets the team the field goal that they need to at least take the lead. And then Atlanta on was it the third down or fourth down play? Now I'm getting them mixed up. Let me double check before I say the wrong thing. I want to say it was the fourth down play where Atlanta gets completely screwed. It should have been defensive pass interference. The defenders all over him, and just they don't get the call. So I mean that's how the game ends. But listen, I mean it proves that you could be 10 times a better team, but if you're the team that makes the mistakes, you're not going to win in the NFL, and that's just right there. So Gary, I mean, Atlanta struggles last week against Tennessee. And now they lose this week after losing to New Orleans a week before. Is there reason to be concerned about Atlanta right now?
Oh, I definitely agree. I think there is a big reason to be concerned. I mean, look at the team we were talking about earlier this year. I mean, they were hard to stop. Look at that running game. You know, Freeman was running crazy, running wild to everyone. Matt Ryan and Julio Jones were connecting just perfectly. I mean, they were doing great jobs. At getting, teams off balance, especially against the defenses that they were facing. So this is just night and day with this offense struggling. And I think, people are figuring them out a little bit here. Matt Ryan is just not playing up to his potential. This is just a big shock to me. He's really, digressed this year compared to improve over time. So you've got to wonder what's going on here. Is it a product of the fact that Atlanta can't get out of their own way, or are teams kind of figuring them out? That's the big question here. But I think you should be concerned.
Yeah, and on the other side, like I said, I felt like Tampa Bay was the inferior team the entire time, but, they find a way to win. I mean, be it as it may. So, Sean, is there any way they can turn this around like New Orleans and make a playoff push? Or are we just looking at one of those teams that you just do not want to play near the end of the year?
They can, because the thing is with Jameis Winston is he has games where he makes all the throws and he looks great, but then the defense hurts him or brings him down or, doesn't do enough or whatever, and it's just like, well, they have, Doug Martin and Charles Sims and a great, 1-2 punch there. And it just that they have the tools and weapons that Tampa Bay at times has looked really good, but the defense isn't strong enough to keep teams out of games. And I think that's going to wind up hurting them, but I think they can make a run. It just depends on all those factors coming together, and I think at the end of the day, you're going to see them as one of those bogey teams that you're not going to want to play. Because I think the 3 teams ahead of them are just better. I would trust Drew Brees a lot more in getting in a shootout and winning with the defense not helping him than I would with Jameis Winston right now. That's just how it is. And, I think Atlanta will eventually figure out that, you're gonna have to... That defense is going to have to play better if they want to do anything. And right now, that's their problem too. Is that Matt Ryan has not played well enough to get into those shootouts like we saw Drew Brees. And if Devontae Freeman isn't on all cylinders, or he's not connected with Julio Jones right away, Falcons don't seem to be doing the same thing here. So that's why I think Carolina's that team in that division, because they're the ones that, even though they've showed weakness in that game with the Colts, they seem to win any way they can. And the other teams seem to have problems in that department. You don't have to worry about the Carolina defense. You have to worry about everybody else's defense in the rest of that division. So we move on here to, sorry, as I'm trying to get something ready for when we get to cover some of these other games here in a second, because there's a few things we got to bring up that were happening in some of these. But so going along here, the Cardinals got into a little bit of a trouble with the Cleveland Browns. At one point, the Browns were up by quite a lot on the Cardinals because they kept, Chris Johnson fumbled, Palmer threw interception, that basically Fitzgerald had the ball taken away from him. But the thing was, the Browns kind of were okay, and then all of a sudden they couldn't compete with that defense when the takeaways weren't there. And that's kind of what happens sometimes. Bad teams, if they can't get takeaways, their offense shows what they are. And Arizona's defense is just really, really good when they have to be. Palmer was just throwing bombs whenever he wanted, honestly. And there was a couple of times where if it was an inch shorter, Jerome Brown would have caught it, or an inch shorter, Larry Fitzgerald would have caught it, and we would be talking about probably more touchdowns for Carson Palmer than the 4 that he got. I mean, and I think the big thing too is Chris Johnson fumbled the ball twice in this game, and he still kept getting carries. He got about 30 carries. He got over 100 yards. He got a touchdown, and now Chris Johnson's apparently talking about an extension with the team. He signed a 1-year deal. Do you think after everything that's been going on with him, mostly he's performed, I think, way more than they ever thought he would. Do you think he deserves that extension, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. He's been playing great.
And, a lot of people have been saying, I've been hearing a lot about people talking about the Cardinals have had the easiest schedule in the league. And that, when they get down to, they still got to play the Seahawks twice. They'll be playing the Seahawks, I think, on Sunday night. And, not this upcoming week, but the week after when the Seahawks are coming off their bye. And then they have a stretch of games that's really difficult, whereas the Seahawks had to play a lot of their big, tougher games at the beginning. And this is why they're 4-4 instead of the 5-2. Do you kind of agree with that the Cardinals kind of have been able to take advantage of the easier schedule, and when they get to this harder schedule, they won't perform as well, or is that not going to matter? Randy?
Yeah, I think it's going to matter a bit, obviously. I mean, but you can't really blame Arizona for what they're doing. I mean, they're taking care of the easier competition now, and hopefully you get rolling into some of this. They are on a bye next week as well, so they also have 2 weeks to prep for this big game against Seattle. And so, I mean, obviously, do I think that they're going to go 6-2 in their final 8 games? Probably not, just because of the level of competition. But they don't have to. I think in that division right now, almost 4-4 the rest of the way is going to win that division. So they've put themselves in a good spot, and now they just have to maintain and take care of business.
Well, Gary, on the other side of things, we did see Johnny Manziel had to come in on that last drive because I think McCown got hurt. They're playing the Bengals on Thursday night in Cincinnati. They're already at what they are going to be. This is probably going to be another loss. At some point here, they have to. Do you think that at some point we're just looking at, are the Browns just going to be that team that's just going to keep fighting, or do you think they eventually just hand it over and say, all right, McCown, you did what you could, or do you think Pettine's going to be stubborn and just start McCown the whole year just to prove a point?
Well, I mean, I think it also depends on how Manziel takes this job and runs with it while McCown's out. And if Manziel comes in here and plays well and shows that, hey, he deserves a look and he deserves a chance to prove himself, then I think that could very well happen. But I think if Manziel comes in here and doesn't really do much, doesn't give a spark, I could see him being more stubborn and just saying, look, McCown's the guy. Stick with him, especially with Manziel's track record. We've got to go with the guy that we know is going to be there this coming Sunday. We're not having to worry about him, being arrested or being in trouble. So I could totally see that point. But, man, it's really going to depend on what happens with Manziel and what he does on the field and takes advantage of this opportunity.
Do you think at some point it just doesn't matter who the quarterback is? That's just a bad team?
Yeah, and I think you're closer to that than anything. And sadly, that's the case. And I can't really speak for what they're going to do because they really may believe in McCown, and they may want McCown just to be the face, at least a quarterback for this team. But I mean, I really feel like you've done so much, and I've said this before on the show. So I mean, this is a broken record, but you've got to give Menzel a chance. You've got to look at him, see what he can do for you. Because if you don't, what's the purpose of even drafting him so high and trying to get something big out of him? I mean, you might as well just let him go.
All right, fair enough. So, and we go from that to another game here with a divisional game that had a lot more for the Vikings going on than the Bears, and it was in Chicago. This is one of those times where I think, we like to blame, and we like to say a lot about Jay Cutler. We like to say a lot about how he'll cost your team the game or whatever, and I think this is one of those times where it wasn't his fault. I mean, he really took the team down. There was a lot of, 3 and outs on both sides and all that, but I mean, he was driving the team down. Having Alshon Jeffrey was huge because the Vikings had no idea how to cover him at all. He was getting almost anything that would come near him. They had him on Terrence Newman, and that was probably a bad decision on their part because he had a ridiculously fantastic touchdown where he just basically reached over Newman in the back of the end zone and was able to keep his feet down and get in. And to me, the Bears did everything you'd expect for them to do. And then at the end, just the defense kind of let them down. They let Charles Johnson catch that 40, 50-yard pass that put him in the field goal range. And Peterson ran the ball once, and then there you go. Bear Walsh kicks that 30-something yard field goal, and the Vikings win. I mean, it was a really even game for the most part. And Bridgewater, there's just throws that should have been intercepted from Bridgewater that weren't. They should have got to Bridgewater a lot more, and they just don't have the pass rush. To me, this is one of those times, Gary, where you got to put it on somebody else on the Bears squad. It's not on Jay Cutler for this one, right?
Oh, I agree. Cutler did everything he could to help his team win this game, and watch that play with him going into the end zone. I mean, really he shouldn't be doing that. I mean, he's going to feel those kind of plays, and he probably still feels that. But I'm looking at this and saying, the rest of the Chicago team has just not provided anything to help. And, he's doing everything he can. Forte getting injured didn't help anything, so he put it on his shoulders. And, yeah, it is a surprise we're saying that Cutler is the guy working hard here because, let's be honest, there's been a lot more situations than not of Cutler kind of giving up on the team.
There's also the big deal about Matt Forte going down, another running back. He hasn't been that involved for a while in the Chicago offense. He's been used a lot more as a passing back lately than a running back, as they've kind of let Langford and him kind of switch carries there. But how big of a blow is this for the Bears not having Forte?
It's a huge blow because, sure, he's not amazing, when you just look at his rushing numbers, but he is so vital to their passing attack. He is the safety net. He is the guy that Cutler knows he can go to if Eddie Royal and Alshon Jeffrey are not getting open. So you lose him, and you lose a major option on that offense.
Well, Randy, on the other side for the Vikings, after this game and after what, you kind of see the Packers are human, they have 2 games against the Packers coming up. Do you think the Vikings now, if they can kind of keep pace, keep it within 1 game, they could win this division?
Personally, I won't go that far, but listen, they control their own destiny right now. And I think when you're 7 games into your season and you can still say that when you're in a division with the Green Bay Packers, you have to be happy.
Gary, what do you
Yeah, I mean, you can only get so much out of them, and I think that like Randy's saying, I mean, with Green Bay being the top dog here, your opportunities are very little. But I mean, you do your best, and then that's all you can do.
Yeah, it's man, if they have those two games, that the Vikings can possibly split them, and then you have the Packers lose one down the line. I mean, that's going to be. I think this game with the Panthers is big because with the Vikings winning that game, and if the Vikings got the Rams next week, if they can kind of keep in tow, let's say Packers lose another game, I mean, that makes that division a heck of a lot more interesting than we thought it was going to be before. So that's something that's going to be interesting going forward. Something that perhaps may not be too interesting going forward is either one of these teams, San Diego Chargers or the Baltimore Ravens, as another player that goes down, Steve Smith Sr., out for the season now with a torn Achilles. Ouch. Apparently John Harbaugh is saying that he has some kind of intel that's saying he might actually come back next year. He may not retire. But, Randy, I mean, this game did happen. It was another close game. And the Chargers lost again.
Yeah, that's just what they've been doing. This is 4 straight games that they've lost within one possession, and they just can't close it. I wish I could understand it. It's not like they're a bad team. It's not like they're blowing big leads. It's just they stay in these really close matchups, and they just can't get it done. They lose Keenan Allen. He has a injury to his kidney area. And that really affected them in the second half, I think, but Malcolm Floyd really stepped up and played really well. They just don't get the job done. They give up the field goal to Justin Tucker, which, Gary, I don't know if you have seen it, but if you did, this is my question to you. Please rate the dance moves of Justin Tucker that he showed after that game-winning field goal.
Oh, it was apparently, a tribute to Drake, apparently. Man, I think it was pretty classy. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I got to get it a 7. Good job. What do they do on Dancing with the Stars? What's the ratings of 5 stars? I don't watch the show.
They do like a 1 to 10 or something.
Okay, good. I'm on there.
There you go. But, yeah, I mean, I guess when you don't win very often anymore, because Baltimore has kind of had that same luck that San Diego has shown, that they just can't win these close ones. So you finally win a close one, you got to dance, right? I guess, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
He's excited. It's okay.
But, back to the San Diego side, it's now 0-4 on the road this year. It's 2-6. So basically now you can just put the season to bed if it isn't already. But is this just bad luck? Is it just the inability to finish a game? Is it just the not right? Is it the coaching staff? Is the personnel? What's going on here in San Diego, Sean?
Well, it's not Phillip Rivers. It's just, but it's the team can't do it. I mean, anyway, we had a technical difficulty, and somehow the speaker decided to just stop itself for some reason, right there in the middle of me talking about that question that Randy asked about San Diego and the Ravens game. Really kind of just think that it's a mixture of the players not doing what they're supposed to do in that play, or the defense not doing their job to where Phillip Rivers doesn't have to try to make some miracle happen at the end, or whatever it is. It's too much for the Chargers, I think. I think we've talked about it a bunch of times. It feels like it's Phillip Rivers by himself trying to will this team on at times, and it's just, he can't do it by himself. I mean, those receivers he has are good. The running game hasn't been, I think, what they wanted it to be. They're there sometimes. They're not there most of the time. And the defense is mediocre. So when you have that and you have a great quarterback having to carry everybody else, sometimes it doesn't work. And the Chargers is a case of it not working. So we move on to a Titans and Texans game that was a mixture of the Texas defense just all of a sudden waking up here, and the offensive line, he couldn't block at all. Poor Mettenberger was sacked. I don't know how many times. I mean, Hoyer was sacked a lot himself by the Tennessee defense, because Tennessee's defense is still out there doing his thing. But Mettenberger sacked, would fumble, they recover. Houston got a field goal out of that. Mettenberger, and a lot of these was on third down too. He gets sacked, they'd have to punt it away. He gets sacked again, they'd have to punt it away. I mean, it was over and over. And then if it wasn't that, it was check down city for Mr. Mettenberger. There was a couple of times where he had to make throws, but it wasn't a whole lot. And a lot of this game as well was penalties. Just, it felt like it wasn't as bad as a game that Randy's going to talk about here, but it felt like constantly something would happen, and then, oh, well, that play gets negated by the fact that we just have a penalty happening. So you hear a bunch of this all the time. Just whistle, whistle, whistle. Okay. It's just like, well, is anybody wanting to actually complete a drive? Because it's just not working. It's like it's either, oh, we complete the 2nd and 3. Oh, well, that's intentional grounding. Oh, illegal block in the back after you got through a 3rd and 8. Well, alright. It's just constantly happening. Oh, an interception? Well, that's taken back too, by the way. So, just tons of penalties. And Houston, while they didn't totally dominate, DeAndre Hopkins was still the man in this. He had a terrific back of the end zone catch that was amazing. And, Hoyer was efficient. And that's all you kind of need him to be. And really, I mean, you didn't have to do much to beat the Titans when they were kind of beating themselves in this game. But that being said, we haven't seen Mettenberger be that great in these starts. And a lot of people were talking about Mariota. You shouldn't draft him. You have other holes. You need to fill those. Give Mettenberger a chance. Does it feel like they were right in drafting Mariota then, Randy?
I'm still kind of on the fence because, yes, Mariota is definitely better than Mettenberger. I'm not going to argue that. I mean, because it's not true. But I can kind of see the argument of trading down and getting a bunch of draft picks and trying to fill other holes and going with Mettenberger a little bit. Because, listen, you're still 1-6. You still have a lot of holes to fix. Yes, Mariota could be a star. He might bust. We still are very unsure about it. But I think with where the Titans were and where they are now, they could have definitely used 4 or 5 good pieces instead of one great one.
Well, Randy, looking at it on the other side for Houston, Indianapolis lost. So they're tied in that division. Is Houston an actual legit threat to the Colts, or are they just are you see them dropping off here? Is it just a case of Houston's going to be good against those bad teams that they play, but when they get to the teams that they have to actually beat to stay in contention, or is this going to be a division like the NFC East where it's going to come down to what team winds up winning in the end?
I think this is just a complete crapshoot anymore. I'm still unsure about Indianapolis and if they're really good or this bad or what. I mean, hell, 6-10 might win this division, so Houston's still in it, Jacksonville's still in it. I wouldn't say Tennessee's really in it, but they're only a game and a half out, so it's just a crapshoot of terribleness.
Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they are just doing nothing to show that they have any hope at all. And so, I mean, I look at this team, especially, looking at Houston and say, you felt like their defense could get them through some things, and all that. But Tennessee's a team that I looked at too, kind of thought they had no hope. And still, both these teams just, they kind of give you what you kind of expected in a way. I just had a lot more hope for Houston. Tennessee, not so much anyway.
Well, let's move on to another game that Randy was telling me was full of penalties in a St. Louis Rams victory against the 49ers, but why was it like that, Randy? Just
because these teams suck. Well, the 49ers especially suck, but I mean the Rams are right there with them. How about a combined 25 penalties in this game? And it all seemed to be in the first quarter. Yeah. Sorry, there's a holding. It was just nonstop. I mean, they came back from a commercial break, and we're just like, oh yeah, by the way, there was another penalty. Another offsides. I'm sorry. It got so bad. There was a point where a referee threw a flag, and then they just came out and said, okay, there was no penalty. It was like he just got so used to throwing it that, no joke, the ump comes out like, oh, there was no foul on this play. Like they announced it. It was like, it's a victory. I mean, to the point, go just, if you have the Game Pass or whatever, go watch the fourth quarter of this game and listen to this poor referee's voice. He loses his voice doing this game. It's cracking in this game. I'm not joking. It was so boring to watch. Colin Kaepernick is terrible, which, the news comes out today. He's now benched. Sean, good move to bench Kaepernick? I mean, is Blaine Gabbert going to do anything, or is this just the end of Colin Kaepernick, period?
Well, you might as well. This is kind of like the Brandon Weeden and Metcalf situation. At this point, neither one is better than the other. So why the hell not? You never know if Blaine Gabbert can find something in these receivers that Kaepernick is just not doing. Perhaps the offensive coordinator can use him better. Who knows? I can't imagine after what he just looked terrible in Jacksonville. Not that Jacksonville was anything like the team that they are now. But a lot of that also has to do with Blake Bortles. So, it's just one of these situations where I feel like they can't. You're not losing if you might as well just go ahead and see what you got in Blaine Gabbert. If anything, your season's pretty much done. So if Gabbert sucks, well, you just put Kaepernick back in.
See, to me at that point, I mean, you make a big move like that, it's tough to go back. I don't think you see Colin Kaepernick start another game for the 49ers again. And whether it's for another team or not, we'll see. But just, I mean, and I don't blame them for benching him. Again, he was completely terrible. It does not help that, everyone else around him is not doing anything. They lose Reggie Bush on a freak play, the punt return where he goes out of bounds and then is unable to stop, and he hits the concrete and his feet come out from underneath him. I think he tore his ACL because of it. So he's done for the year. I mean, they're running with Mike Davis and Kendall Gaskins, of all people. I mean, what are you going to do there? 6 receptions for Vernon Davis, so of course ship him off to Denver because he actually did something good. So if people haven't heard that, that was a trade that happened today, or yesterday, I guess, by now. But on the St. Louis side, listen, their defense is amazing. There is an extra reason why the 49ers look so bad. It's because St. Louis does have a great defense, especially when they're at home. So that's a key. Tavon Austin did pretty well, but to me, I've been saying it for weeks. Gary, when does St. Louis officially change their name to the St. Louis Girlies?
I hope sooner than later. I think they'd get a lot more publicity, and probably succeed more because Gurley is the man in this team, and you just gotta love this kid. I'm so excited about Gurley, but yeah, I don't know. I think they'd have a lot more fans if they did change him to that name.
Yeah, no joke. Listen, Gurley, since becoming the main star, in the running back or in the backfield, has just been ridiculous. He goes 20 carries, 133 yards, and a touchdown. He breaks a big one for 71 yards that basically just ends the game. I mean, because the moment they go up by a couple scores, you could just put this one in the bed, which sadly is exactly what happened. The second half is extremely boring. Nothing happens. The Rams have given up. The 49ers have given up. And just the first half is all you have to watch of this game.
Randy, I mean, how scary would this team be for the Rams? This is what the team I'm talking about here. Is if they did have a quarterback that legitimately could scare defenses.
Yeah, no joke. I mean, you have decent receivers. You know, I mean, they're not really showing it right now, but Brian Quick is a good receiver. Lance Kendrick is a decent receiver. Jared Cook is a decent tight end. You have Tavon Austin, who is super fast and a crazy weapon. Todd Gurley in the backfield. Their defense is stellar. I agree. If Carson Palmer was on the Rams would be the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. I think they're almost the exact same team, just without the quarterback. So I'm 100% with you.
At least it's forced them to actually figure out how to use Tavon Austin because Nick Foles is that inept. So, that's a plus, I guess. But moving on to, we've got to start talking about our teams here at some point, and we're going to start with your Jets. Randy, who just kept losing quarterbacks, and then also fell to the Oakland Raiders, which they historically don't have a great record going to black hole anyway. But what did you see here?
I saw a defense that forgot to get off the plane. Obviously, the main story is the quarterback situation for the Jets. Fitzpatrick goes down pretty early, forgets to slide, and gets hit, I believe, by Charles Woodson, and messes up the thumb on his non-throwing hand, which basically means he can't grip the ball with that hand, which you'd think is not that important, but when you're trying to hand the ball off or trying to even receive the ball from a snap, it's extremely important. Geno Smith comes in, he looks okay, especially for coming in mid-game, obviously with no game planning or anything like that. I thought his throws were very well. His decision-making was decent. He does throw one interception, mostly because he does not look off Charles Woodson at all, so he's able to jump the route. But other than that, he was making good throws, especially in the second half to Brandon Marshall when he was healthy. He leaves the game twice in this game. Then Geno Smith leaves the game for a little bit after a big hit, and they kind of mix and match the last couple minutes. But it's 100% on the defense here for the Jets. There are 2 touchdowns that happen 100% because of poor tackling. Just not wrapping them up, letting them bounce off of them, and then continue running. It was an embarrassment. Todd Bowles has basically said as much. They showed no heart in this game. But give credit to Oakland. They came out with a great game plan. The defense played great. Derek Carr was just finding people left and right. Latavius Murray is matchup proof. I mean, Jets have a great run defense, and he just was running around them and just going crazy. And the thing that was just driving me nuts as a Jets fan, it would just seem like, especially early on in this game where it was still interesting, it would be just they would stop them on first down, give up a short play on second down, so there's like 3rd and 6, and then it'd be a first down. And they just could not stop them. The first time that the poor Oakland punter ever saw the field was midway through the fourth quarter. I mean, just Oakland was not coming off the field. And again, everyone's going to talk about the quarterback situation because both quarterbacks are now day-to-day. But to me, it's the defense needs to look in the mirror and figure out what the hell happened on their flight to Oakland, because they didn't show up, and they know they didn't show up. But, Sean, I'll just come out and ask you, who starts for the Jets next week?
I think it's Fitzpatrick's until he proves that it's his fault that he shouldn't be playing. Gary, do you have a thought on?
To me, the tendon situation going on with his hand. I mean, if Fitzpatrick was able to get through that, I would definitely pick Fitzpatrick. But that's scary, especially when you can't grip the ball. I think that puts your team in a bad situation. I to me, I tend to reevaluate that, maybe see what you could do, and maybe go ahead and get Geno Smith ready for this game.
Well, to me, it depends on who's healthy. I mean, right now they look. I mean, both are very shaken up. I think you go with Geno if he's healthy, because we know that Fitzpatrick can't hold on to the ball. I think Geno showed enough, but we might see Bryce Petty next week. They may pick up Joe Schmo off whatever practice squad they can. Ryan Mallett's now looking for a job. Yeah, I'm not saying that with any smile on my face.
You can trade for Kaepernick now.
I was about to say the trade deadline is tomorrow. Do you see a Kaepernick trade? Do you see an RG3 trade? Again, I kind of hope not. But if your top two quarterbacks are out for a few weeks, I mean, and you're in the playoff hunt, you got to do something. So,
you know what? I don't think RG3 is that bad of it. If you're going to go, I still think, it's not like we've really gotten to see him much. Maybe just in a different setting might help him.
Maybe, but the question, if you add RG3 to the Jets, the question to Randy is do you like your head coach? Or do you want him to be gone? That's the question, because every time RG3 goes somewhere, the coach leaves.
That would be the GM at that point.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the head coaching is usually the death after RG3 joins the team.
Yeah.
That's true.
No.
Kaepernick too, I guess.
Okay, I'm switching sides. I'm done. I can't talk about the Jets. It hurts. It hurts. Quarterback stuff hurts. Yeah. Gary, listen, Oakland is a way better team than I think any of us gave credit for. I think we all thought they were going to improve, but we all thought they were a year or two away. If you had the chance to do mid-season predictions, would you put the Raiders as a wild card team?
I definitely think so. Looking at the rest of this, AFC, I just look at it. I'm just looking at it just right now, and I'm just kind of thinking, if you told me what I know without looking at the records, just know a few things. You get Fitzpatrick, a quarterback for the Jets, and New England, of course, is New England. No changes. Just they've got Tom Brady doing well. I think those two teams are definitely in the hunt. Those are the two teams I'm definitely looking for being in the picture. So, of course, one of those is a wild card team. But the rest of these, divisions, I'm not sold just yet that those are the teams. So, yeah, I do think so. I think that the Oakland Raiders are the one team I would definitely put in the picture of being in the wild card.
Yeah, I mean, the AFC is top-heavy. You've got three of the divisions led by undefeated teams. And then you've got the crappy AFC South. So, I mean, everybody else is kind of like in the middle right now. There's just this huge... It's almost like the WWE mid-card. We're just all stuck in this black hole of stuff.
And I'll say this, too. I think when I did my predictions, if I'm not wrong, I think I actually legitimately had the Bills and the Jets, if I'm not wrong, in the playoffs. Now... looking back at it now and looking at it, if I don't know the record and I know the situation, yeah, definitely the Raiders are in that spot. The Bills are definitely nowhere close.
Yeah, they're the ones that have looked the best, I think, out of a lot of the middle teams there. I still think the Steelers are in that hunt more than... I just have more faith in the Steelers out of experience, but there's that 6th wild card spot, and, man, Oakland could be it, So let's talk about this Sunday night game because it was rather interesting. I was doing the rabble for it with Brandon, and I think the Packers were as shocked as everybody else that Peyton Manning showed up, and we got the Peyton Manning that was first there with the Broncos when they went to the Super Bowl and everything, because my Lord, Peyton Manning was hitting everything. He was making the throws, but I think the biggest thing was the running game was actually doing their job. They were slicing and dicing that Packers defense. They couldn't stop Hillman or Anderson. They were getting the first downs they needed. Demaryius Thomas was seemingly wide open all the time. I don't know what let's be fair here. They did lose Rollins and Sam Shields, their two best corners, during the game. So you're having Demarius Randall, and then I even forgot who the other guy was that was covering. So you're having backups covering elite athletes, and that's a big deal. You know, Matthews was doing everything he could. They couldn't really get pressure on Peyton Manning, hardly either. Nothing was going right with the pass. And then on the other end, the thing you count on all the time, Aaron Rodgers, 77 yards passing. When does that ever happen to the Packers? When you would just see a sea of blue happening because there was no green and yellow on the field that Aaron Rodgers was throwing to because they were constantly covered. I mean, James Jones, I think, had one catch. Devontae Adams did nothing again. I swear I think that guy's just... I don't know if that guy's ever going to be something. Randall Cobb was, kind of covered mostly. Eddie Lacy wasn't doing a whole lot. James Starks even less. I mean, that whole offense was just shut down. And Aaron Rodgers was seeing guys constantly. He was having to move around in a pocket that was touching him. And I still couldn't believe some of the throws that he had to make with pockets that were touching him. They could have held out their hand and touched Aaron Rodgers. That's how close to him they were most of the game. It was insane. I mean, so to me, Gary, looking at this, is this a one-game deal for Peyton Manning where they were just that on fire everywhere, or is Peyton Manning finding a rhythm and we should expect to... Maybe the Colts aren't the biggest outlier for whether Peyton Manning's back or not, but do you sense that, especially now with the news that Peyton Manning got another weapon in Vernon Davis for some 2016 and 17 picks? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you're talking about one game, he definitely looked great. He looked like, the Manning that we once knew. We talked about this with Andrew Luck. I mean, Andrew Luck looks like the guy we all, imagine he'd be this entire season. But I'm not ready to say after this game that he's just all the way back. But I think when you do add Vernon Davis into this group, when you do the things that they did against the Packers, which is a solid defense. It really is. I think the key here is noticing that, the Packers didn't get the pass rush. I think that's what's affected Manning all year long. So, as long as teams don't pressure him, he's going to look great. But I think that, we're over-evaluating it if we say that, oh, yeah, he's definitely back in true form. But he does look good, and I think he will have success.
And I will say this, we know what we get from Owen Daniels. He's reliable. He got a bunch of first downs for Peyton Manning, and who also got a bunch of first downs with Virgil Green. And he's been kind of few and far between for Manning. And now you're adding Vernon Davis to the mix, and something that we've kind of seen a lot with Manning before, and they kind of try to do that with Andrew Luck, and it doesn't always work. Is having three legit tight ends that Manning can kind of interchange and go to, Randy, and that's what you're getting here with Vernon Davis. And now you have. Do you feel like it's now you have a legit replacement for Julius Thomas?
I don't know if it's like a straight replacement for Julius Thomas, but I think you're right where they can kind of interchange all these tight ends, which seems to be what Peyton Manning likes to go to. I mean, just dump it down to tight ends or hit Demarius Thomas. I mean, that's kind of the MO anymore. And I think that this game hit perfectly on the schedule for Denver because you could kind of see in the first 6 games that the offensive coordinator and Peyton Manning were trying to combine styles, and it wasn't meshing well. And they got that extra week, and it really started to gel better. And I think they just outmatched Green Bay. The game plan was perfect. Peyton Manning looks pretty good. And now you put Vernon Davis in this mix, and once again, they're a really dangerous team because the offense is starting to figure it out. C.J. Anderson looked good. Ronnie Hillman looked good. That defense is still amazing. So now we go from this, well, the defense is great, but the offense is just junk, and it's going to fall apart at some point, to, okay, when can we get to this Denver-New England game, please?
Right. If you're the Packers, I already mentioned it before, but you're going to Carolina, who has a defense that's pretty stacked as well. You have a back four that's been consistently taking away teams. You have a Kuechly that's very active, very much like Clay Matthews is, and you have a front four that can rush. And if you're Green Bay and you're Aaron Rodgers, is there something that you can do to make sure that you don't have the same game twice here coming up? I mean, you think this is just a one game thing, or on the other side, or for the Packers, are you staring at possibly a losing streak here for them, at least for 2 games? Randy, what do you think?
Sorry, I was reading something else. Go ahead and go to Gary.
Gary?
What was your question again?
And we're both.
That you were asking Randy. Yeah, I was reading my stuff too. What was your question?
I love that.
Well, he's got his fantasy thing coming up next. I got college football. We're both trying to...
We're both looking at our segments. We're like, okay, Randy's got this. Oh, wait, Gary's got this.
Hey, this is why live stuff is great.
Exactly. So, what was your question?
So, we talked about it a little bit during the Rabble thing, Gary, but, Panthers defense is very much in a similar vein to the Broncos. They have a solid quarter that shuts down people. We saw Norman basically shut down T.Y. Hilton in this game against the Colts. So, and maybe perhaps we don't see him shut down Demaryius Thomas like that, but that's a legitimate possibility there. And you have safeties that can cover. You have Luke Kuechly that runs around. You have a front four that can rush. These are all things that Green Bay had to face in this game against the Broncos, and now they have a blueprint of what to look at. What do you think is the issue here for the Packers, mainly? Eddie Lacy hasn't looked like himself. They haven't been running well, but Aaron Rodgers has been able to kind of overcome that. How do they avoid going in an 0-2 hole in the next 2 games?
That's a great question, and I think you kind of pointed out right there that the running game is a serious issue. At the beginning of this year, they were running the ball fine, and they were doing okay, and they were able to be more balanced. And a lot of people don't take into consideration that a lot of people believe that, oh no, you can be the best passing team in the league and win tons of games. Sure, you can do that against bad defenses, but once you play a defense that knows how to do things like shut your receivers down and keep you boxed in, that doesn't work anymore, and you can't be one-dimensional. And I think that's the problem the Packers are going to have in this game coming up, is if they don't run the ball well and they don't show Carolina that they can run, then Carolina is going to do what they did, primarily in this game against the Colts, and that's cover the receivers, cover them well. And, just trust your guys up front to stop the run. And so I think that's a big key here. They've got to find a way to run the ball. They've got to do it. If not, I think really what the key here is for Aaron Rodgers not to throw the ball downfield as much as it is to maybe to get some quick screens, find some slants, do things to get the ball out quickly, because, the Panthers are going to come after Aaron Rodgers.
And I think also, the Packers defense is just, it's weird because Cam's going to present something different than Peyton Manning. Obviously, he's going to move around and run and stuff like that, but I think he's also just as mistake-prone as they thought Peyton Manning was going to be, and that's something that maybe that Packers defense can kind of key in and give Aaron Rodgers a different look.
Yeah. This game could come down to field position, if you ask me personally. It's going to be a close game. It really will be.
I really think the Packers were just expecting a different Peyton Manning. And they were shocked when they couldn't get the interceptions. They couldn't get the field position. And when they were having to deal with, oh crap, we've got to get to Peyton Manning because he's going to destroy us if we don't, and they couldn't, So, but yeah, moving and I get now. Randy can go have like 10 minutes to go look at.
I know you didn't talk about the Seattle and Dallas game.
That's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing. That's what I'm saying. Randy can go have 10 minutes to go look at the college football because we're going to be talking about this game.
I was just hoping we can move on to the college. We don't have to talk about this.
No, we do have to. We made Randy have to talk about his team.
Yeah.
I had to sit there and call this game with Brandon bothering me constantly about how the Cowboys were just being ineffed. This is the thing that I took away from it. Neither offense was really doing anything. This was a complete and utter defensive battle. You get the takeaways that you want. Greg Hardy makes an interception, gives you the ball at the 16-yard line, and you cannot put the ball in the end zone. What is wrong with you? I know they blew it, and they should have had a 12-man on the field penalty and all that stuff that would have made it first and goal on the 4. And that was weird because I was sitting there the whole time. There's flags on the field. What are they doing? I can't hear the referee because my TV's on mute. But you just threw flags on the field, and then nothing got called. I had no idea what the hell that was. But still, I mean, McFadden didn't blow the world open, but he still got 115 yards of scrimmage. Christian Michael looked better in this game when he wasn't worried about making sure he let the Seahawks teammates know that he was still their buddy. That to me really irks me, and I think Jason Garrett made a kind of a point of that too. I get it; they're your friends. There's a place and there's a time and place for that. Don't be knocking elbows with Bruce Irvin after you made a play that went for like 3 yards. That is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. He is now your opponent. What are you doing? Stupid. Anyway, just Matt Castle, 97 freaking yards. I don't know, Gary. Where did we go wrong here? It's just, I thought Matt Castle was supposed to be better than that.
This is here's the struggle. I can't really say it was all Matt Castle's fault. Matt Castle didn't do what he did the week before, throw 3 interceptions and just really have a bad game. I think really this boils down to this Seattle defense is nothing to mess with. They're a good defense, and right now Dallas's offense is not ready for that. They're just not. And Matt Castle is not going to do the same things that a Tony Romo would do. He's not going to give you that spark. So I'm just looking at it as he did the best he could. He ran pretty well. You got to give him credit for that. He made some smart decisions. I really boil this down to, though, is that they just couldn't get past that Seattle defense. It was just they locked down on them. They weren't allowing Jason Witten to get free very much. They were keeping things under control. And Dez Bryant didn't get open, and I put a lot of this on Dez Bryant personally. He credits himself as being a guy that can beat Richard Sherman, and he didn't. Richard Sherman owned him this entire game. I don't care, injury or not. He should be able to beat him. So Dez Bryant's a big key in this. If anybody needs to be pointed at blame on the offense, I think you got to point at Dez Bryant for this. But really, this boils down to both defenses played well. Dallas Cowboys defense, they did everything they could. The one thing I will say is I was very, very disappointed in the Dallas defense not getting sacks on Russell Wilson. That is the guy that everybody's hit and sacked. They didn't get one. They didn't do that. And I think that entire defense should be a little bit embarrassed today because they should have had sacks against him. So those are the big keys. If you would have told me that Russell Wilson wasn't sacked in this game before we even picked this game, I would have immediately checkmarked Seattle's victory because you've got to sack him.
Well, not only that, they also had different opportunities where, again, fingertips away from interceptions, that kind of thing. Barry Church had one that probably should have been intercepted. It's just...
Yeah.
They've been so close all year of that should have happened, and it didn't.
The team that scored the touchdown won. That's the way it worked. The team that scored a touchdown. It really, honestly, and it's because both defenses played so well, but that one drive, I think, is still haunting the Dallas Cowboys today. One drive changed this entire game. I don't think that either team just played awful. Both teams played to what we thought they could play to. It's just
but Seattle's offenses look the same. I mean, it didn't look. Marshawn Lynch was contained. I mean, this, for all intents and purposes, I watched the game from last year, and the difference to me is Romo was not in this game, and that's what, at the end of the day, because Des Bryant only had 60 yards in that first game against Richard Sherman. He only had 4 catches, 63 yards. He did make one catch that was very important that extended the drive that wound up being the Murray touchdown or whatever. But I didn't think McFadden looked bad. You also didn't have Joseph Randle doing the change of pace that you have with McFadden or with Murray in the first game or whatever. But to me, it's just the defense played very similarly to, and there was people we were missing, but there was a lot more people that you were missing that were in that game last year that were not in this game. And not having Dunbar, not having Romo was absolutely and utterly huge when you have a defense that touchdown that Witten scores in the game last year, where basically Romo is moving around and then in a split second, he throws it to Witten when he has a moment that he is open and he scores a touchdown. It's like, no, Castle's not doing that. Like, he's not. It's just not happening. That's a Tony Romo thing. That's an elite quarterback thing, and Castle's not an elite quarterback, and it's just it's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. And you said it, Sean, earlier. The Dallas Cowboys have been so close in these games. I mean, they were owning the Falcons, and they couldn't handle them after a while. They were still close in that Giants game. Really should have had a great chance of winning that game. There's several games on this docket you can look at and point. And if you had Tony Romo, you probably would have won a lot of them. But you got to give other teams credit where the Dallas Cowboys don't deserve credit. I mean, other teams are winning without their quarterbacks. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers winning with Landry and Vic, and we've got look at Hasselbeck winning for the Colts. I mean, other teams are doing it, and Dallas isn't. So, I mean,
Hasselbeck's the only one winning for the Colts.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you go. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm not going to believe it till I see it, but man, they got a big game coming up here this next week, and we'll talk about that Thursday.
Well, Randy, I mean, I know you don't like talking about the Seahawks either, but now with the Seahawks having an easier part of their schedule, quote unquote, they still have to play the Cardinals twice. They're 4-4. They've now hit their bye week. They've got a big game against the Cardinals next weekend, or whenever, week 10. Do you think that we could see Seattle leading this division when it comes time to week 17, or is it still going to be the Cardinals?
There's definitely a chance. Like you said, they're 2 back and you get Arizona. So, I mean, just like that, you could be right in it. I mean, it's starting to look a lot more like the last 2 weeks are going to be really interesting because they get the Rams and Cardinals there at the end. And it could be a 3-horse race. But they're starting to look a little bit better. I mean, I don't know how you guys saw this game on their side, whether they looked bad or not. Because I'll tell you one thing, I saw one play of this game. There were 2 games going on in the late docket, and it was this game and my Jets, and I was focused on the Jets until the second quarter, and then I gave up on football in general. So I have not gone around to actually watching this game yet, but so I don't know if they looked better here, but yeah, I mean they come off a bye and get 3 straight games at home. They could definitely be right back in this division.
The offense looked like it's been looking, pretty much. I mean, I wonder sometimes if Russell Wilson didn't have the defense he has, if he would be this quarterback that he is. Because sometimes he just doesn't look that great. He runs around, and that's what gets him things.
Well, he's kind of had to run around because I hate to say it, but this was another. I've talked about how I feel like the trade between Nick Foles and Sam Bradford was bad for both teams. The trade that Seattle did for Jimmy Graham, I think, was bad for both teams because Seattle lost their core offensive lineman in Unger, and they're bringing Jimmy Graham, who is allergic to blocking. And so now the offensive line is a complete mess, so Russell Wilson has to run around all over the place. I mean, it's either that or get sacked even more than he already is.
Yeah, and the sad thing is Jimmy Graham's leading that team in receptions. He's the only one that could catch the ball for the Seahawks in that game. Really.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the dangerous thing, too. I mean, you got to look at it. Peyton Manning and Denver goes on bye, and they kind of figured out their offense. Now, with Seattle going on bye here, maybe Pete Carroll can now go, okay, this is what worked with Jimmy Graham, this is what didn't. Okay, now let's work in more of the stuff that worked, and maybe we start seeing the old Jimmy Graham a little bit more.
Yeah, it's just the team, when you have to make that team one-dimensional, they don't look very good at all. It's just some teams, if you make them one-dimensional, okay, we'll still find a way to pick you apart. But you shut down Marshawn Lynch, that team has a problem. And they showed it in that game. It was just one of those things where, at the end of the day, Seahawks are just the better team overall, and they won, and give them credit for that, But that pretty much does it for our recap of the Week 8. We did have some firing of officials in college football.
Oh, Jesus.
God. Yeah.
What a mess.
That and a few other things.
Yeah, we'll touch that up here at the end, just to kind of go through some of the key stuff. It was pretty interesting to have College Game Day up in my area. They were 40 minutes away up in the Palouse for Washington State when they hosted Stanford. So I know a lot of my buddies went up there to watch that game in some pretty heavy downpour. Washington State continues to show that they are actually a legit, decent team. They put Stanford to the limit, led most of the game. Unfortunately, their kicker, who was great all game, misses the game winner at the end, and Stanford survives. But I mean, give it to Washington State on that kind of a stage. They showed that they belong. Another team that is continuing to show that they belong is the Florida Gators. Completely destroyed Georgia in that, famous rivalry, beating them 27-3. The game wasn't even close. Doesn't matter what quarterback's in there. It seems like for Florida, they just get the job done. But other than that, not a ton going on. Notre Dame getting a big road win against Temple, giving them their first loss. Oklahoma State looking like they were going to lose to Texas Tech and then putting up a 70 spot to come back and win that game 70-53, putting Drew Brees and Eli Manning to shame. Penn State is looking legit, dominating Illinois. But really, I think the main story coming out of this was exactly what you said, Sean, was that crazy play at the end of the Duke-Miami game where there were, 6 seconds left, and there ended up being 8 laterals and apparently 9 missed calls. And Miami comes back and wins the game, and basically the refs the officiating management has basically said, yes, they blew this call and this call and this call and this call, but there's nothing we can do. I don't understand how there's nothing you can do. There's no more plays. The game is over. Just overturn it. I understand it would set a precedent, but it's the last play of the game. There's no time on the clock. Just say all of these penalties happened, or just one of them. Duke wins the game, and you move on. I mean, could you imagine if this was a game that was like national championship worthy importance? If this was an Ohio State-Michigan situation? Or Ohio State-Michigan State situation?
Or Alabama and LSU next week.
Exactly. I mean, any of these these teams are national championship contenders, not just good teams that are looking to win a conference maybe or get a good bowl game. That actually, yours is even better. Could you imagine Alabama pulling off that play with all of these penalties at the end and beating LSU at the end? The controversy that we would hear the whole rest of the year. I mean, do you agree, Gary, that they shouldn't overturn it, or how do you feel about this mess?
I personally feel like any officiating call like this, especially like you said, no time on the clock, I think you have to reevaluate that, and you do have to make the correct call in that situation. And I know the school that is that actually would lose the victory would be very upset. But to me personally, I think the team that deserves the victory needs the victory. So I would totally be upset, especially you just gave that example of LSU and Alabama. Man, imagine that would be huge because LSU is so high on the rankings that if they were to lose to Alabama, that crushes their season. That takes them out of it, and that would be all in purposes wrong. So I think they should overturn it.
Not to mention, it gives that new Miami coach a win that they didn't deserve.
Exactly.
It gives them some kind of. I mean, I understand most of their fans are going to look at that and go, well, we know we were one call away from losing. It's not like we just outdid everything. But it's just, to me, that's just, I don't know. I think you can't do anything in that sense because there are other situations in history where they're going to go, well, we should have done it then, should have done it then, should have done. That has to be done in the off season. That has to be something that's decided in the off season. You go, okay, from now on, if there's a last minute play and there's a penalty and it's not called and it's egregious, or there's a bunch of penalties and they're not called, then it should be overturned or something. But I agree with the initial ruling. You can't do anything right now because there's no law for that. Well, what are they going to do?
Yeah, I hear you there. And it's just getting to the point where at some point I understand judgment calls shouldn't be reviewed because then you're getting a different judge, just the way people interpret a hit or pass interference and all that kind of stuff.
We already have in the NFL with the challenges, right? They revealed this week that 45% of the rulings on the field are changed by challenges or reviews. Yeah, but
that's different with the reviews. I mean, you get a closer look at it, but that's still like the calls that are getting reviewed and stuff. But they will never allow you to challenge like a pass interference call or a holding call because people are going to interpret it differently. I mean, there's probably pass interference on every play if you really break it down.
Or at least holding.
Yeah, holding definitely every play. So it's tough to say, okay, now we need to put these penalties as possible challenges at the end of games or at any point in the games or what, but how they didn't at least go back and review the part where the player was actually down is the thing that's the most egregious to me. So I don't understand how they've went, yes, he was down. The game's over. Because in college, everything's reviewed. So how was that not reviewed? It's a mess. Way to go, ACC.
Oh, wait, they didn't even review it after it happened?
If they did, they sucked.
But can you do that? I mean, like, okay, I saw it in one game. I forgot which game it was. And I think we were doing it. Was it, I think it might have been the Cowboys game last week, where they picked up the flag because they thought it was deflected, but then because it wasn't deflected on the review, they went ahead and made the penalty happen. That's the only time I've ever seen that. But can you really do that on a review and go, oh, there's a penalty there, so now we're going to call it penalty? Wouldn't that be the same thing as what they're doing right now?
Well, no, that one makes more sense because that's not a judgment call. Because obviously, once the ball's tipped, you could spear whoever you want. I mean, hitting is fair game at that point. So that's not a judgment call. So it's with the tipped passes, they can go back and go, okay, it was tipped here. So then any contact after that is no longer pass interference. That's not a judgment call. It's basically, I mean, we have hit that point with technology and all of this stuff and the crazy rule book that the NFL has and college football has, that if you watch CBS or Fox or the NFL Network or ESPN or anyone else that covers the NFL or college football, they all have their special ref, their ref analyst person. And I think I saw 7 times somebody different get asked, hey, they came in, so what is a catch? And they all said something different.
Yep.
So, I mean, we're just to that point where everything's just confusing as hell, especially for us guys that then come on here and act like we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So at some point, these rule books need to be more simplified and stuff. But just, again, the situation in Miami is wacky.
Yeah, that's just really weird. But, Gary, your fantasy pickups for Week 9.
All right, guys. Well, there's a few guys on this list that are kind of, must-gets, but one of those guys that I want to tell you guys is a sleeper for sure is Ben Watson. New Orleans is going on fire with Drew Brees, and that's because Ben Watson's a big part of that. This guy is let's just be honest, a guy that none of us would have ever seen this coming, but, this year he's definitely become a big part of the New Orleans arsenal, and Drew Brees likes him, so I want everybody to kind of pay attention to that. Maybe go pick him up and use him as a flex, or, if you're desperate for a tight end and you're doing terrible and you just need somebody, maybe you go pick up Watson and maybe he can help you. We just talked about Steve Smith Sr. being out for the year. That is devastating for a lot of teams. A lot of fantasy owners are really depressed this week about that. But let me help you out. If you don't even have him on your roster and you need a decent receiver, a guy that could possibly sneak in and help your team, Chris Givens is going to have to pick up the slack, especially since Steve Smith's gone. Aiken is going to be the number one guy there now, and Aiken's going to probably get a lot more coverage. So Chris Givens could be a sneaky guy to go pick up and put on your roster. You know what? Matt Forte's hurt. Look at that. You need a running back? Maybe you look up Jeremy Langford. This kid is going to be a lot more focused on. He's going to get a chance to get his, and so I want you guys to kind of maybe look at him, maybe put him on your roster.
But plays pretty well with Forte in there anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. So now he's going to be focused. You're going to really want him. And the guy that I think is a definite, you've got to go get him, is D'Angelo Williams. We all know that Pittsburgh likes to run the ball, and you've already seen what he can do. I'm sure you've already dropped him, and if you haven't, congratulations to you for being smart. But most people have already dropped this guy because of Le'Veon Bell's return. Well, now with his exit, now you can go back and get him and make sure that you have him starting in some of these games, because I guarantee he's going to be a big hit in Pittsburgh. And my last guy, and this is another big sleeper that we want to keep our eye on. Even if you don't pick him up this week, you need to keep this guy in your view, because Rashard Jennings has not exactly lit up anything in New York, but Orleans Darkwa is a guy that has caught the eye of the New York Giants coaching staff. They're starting to like this kid. He's starting to get a little bit more playing time. I want you to kind of keep your eye on him, because he could help your team later on down the road. And that is my top 5 possibilities for fantasy this week.
Yeah. So, and Orleans Darkwa, that's all I've been hearing from Giants fans for like the whole year. Has been, when's Orleans Darkwa going to play? And then the one series they put him in against the Cowboys, he ran through them like nobody's business. I don't know if he did a whole lot in the Saints game, but yeah, I mean, Orleans Darkwa, I think definitely not be one of those. He's playing sooner rather than later, like Gary said. So now we get to get to our power rankings, guys. And I mean, I don't know that we're changing a whole lot. All the teams that we already had on here, they all did what they're supposed to do. So, except for one. Did Green Bay look bad enough where we're moving them? Or are they still in the top 5?
Well, I looked at mine, and I probably changed mine up a lot more than you guys. But, I mean, let's just talk about it. I'll just go from 1 to 5 here, and I'll kind of explain it from there. New England, yeah, definitely tops. Can't take that away from them. But you know what? I did move Green Bay down. They were my number 2. They fell to number 4 for me. And it's simply because of I go back to the adversity. And adversity kind of hit Green Bay, and they weren't able to overcome it. So that kind of makes me concerned. But the one team that I can say that does beat them is Cincinnati. Cincinnati does a great job. They face against good teams. I think they had a big matchup this week. Even though it was Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh hasn't been great, Pittsburgh is still a team that plays Cincinnati very hard, and they were able to overcome. So I got to give credit. So they're my number 2 now. I love their defense. I still do have my worries about Peyton Manning, but Denver did beat Green Bay, so I've got them above Green Bay at number 3. I think that defense is amazing, but I still, like I said, Manning is a big worry for me, so I've got them at 3. And my number 5, and this is not only just because of tonight, but I just think they're a really well-rounded team, and that's Carolina. I did have Arizona on my list, but Arizona kind of falls a little bit here. I think Carolina is just a great defense with Cam Newton leading the offense down the way and doing a great job. So that's my top 5.
Randy?
Yeah, mine's pretty similar. New England tops for me. I do also have Green Bay dropping to number 4. I still think they're a great team, just had a rough night against a good team, and Carolina at 5. For me, I switched Denver and Cincinnati. Listen, yes, I do still have some reservations for Peyton Manning, but I think they really are starting to figure out that offense. Bringing in Vernon Davis is only going to help matters even more. I like that the way that C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman looked, and they're becoming even more of an all-around team, so I think they're number 2. And then Cincinnati, great team. Once again, the most overall rounded team in the AFC North by far. They're going to walk away with that division, but I think they're just slightly lower in my eyes than Denver.
Well, I've got New England at 1. They have done nothing but prove that they should be at number 1 until they otherwise lose or don't blow somebody out. I'm going to put Cincinnati at 2 because they beat their division opponent that they needed to beat. They didn't look great doing it, but the team was an all-around team. I think the team finally helped Andy Dalton. He didn't have to carry them in this game. The defense was stout. The running game was there. It wasn't, a total run through Steelers or anything. Steelers are pretty good defensively, but they came in and did what you're supposed to do. And in a situation where last year or any other year, you could say that the Bengals might have faltered there. They didn't this time. And let's see how far they go. I think Carolina, I had them at 3. They didn't do anything to make me move them. They do what they've done this whole entire year. A lot of these games against these crappy teams that they played in the first 4 weeks shouldn't have been that close, but they were. But they figure out a way to win, and they keep doing that. And they did it again in this game against the Colts. Maybe they did let Andrew Luck go and get those unanswered points there late, but again, Cam Newton put them in a situation to win. Gano hit the field goal, and they won. So I'm keeping them at 3. Denver looked really good against Green Bay. Let's see what happens. I don't know about the Colts. They should look good again, but you don't know. We don't know if that's a one-game thing or not, but we know the defense is nothing to scoff at. That's why I got them at 4. And Green Bay is too good still to not have them at least in your top 5. I got to have Green Bay at 5. So there we go. There's our power rankings for this week. And yeah, I think we're all going to be in agreement on Drew Brees being the player of the week. He barely, if it isn't, it's sort of like picking hairs with Eli Manning had a great game too, but Drew Brees' team won. He had 7 touchdowns. It was incredible. And, for a guy that I think a lot of people were saying, oh, he doesn't have it anymore and he's going down and whatever, and he's proven that no, he's not. So, to me, I think he deserves to be the unanimous player of the week. Anybody have any other thoughts or anything on why pick Drew Brees?
No, Drew Brees. I mean, you throw 7 touchdowns, you win.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah, so there goes week 8. Hey, where's our week 7 player of the week, by the way?
Oh, I just didn't probably type that in.
I completely forgot. I don't even know who we picked last week. So.
I think it was Kirk Cousins, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Kirk Cousins.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so that's 4 quarterbacks that we picked. But hey, we've had 1 running back, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and the rest quarterbacks. Maybe one of these games we'll be able to put a defender in there. Luke Kuechly almost made him a candidate, but yeah, it could be interesting. We could have we just haven't had that defender that we've had the defenders that have done well, the corners that have done their job or whatever, but I don't know, we've had one defensive player that's like just been dominating like we had JJ Watt doing last year. So, you know. But yeah, that's going to do it for our week 8 recap show. It probably went, I think we still went under our target, but I was hopefully leaning towards more of a faster show than originally intended. But anyway, we'll be back on Thursday night, Friday morning pretty much, for our week 9 preview, barring any internet problems again. And yeah, we'll be there for that. And of course, then we'll be back again in this spot for our week 9 look at everything. But Randy, you've been doing things on your podcast. Let everybody know what's going on.
Yeah, definitely check out backlogbusting.com. We have a podcast every other Tuesday. Our last one that was posted from last week, we talk about Alien Isolation. We talk about the Resident Evil remake that came out for the GameCube. And we talk about the Telltale game for Back to the Future, which was an interesting experience to go through. Working on my games for the next podcast. Also check out our YouTube channel. It's the Backlog Busting Project, where we play through Mario Maker every Monday. And here pretty soon we plan to expand that and do some other games.
Yeah, you got that Fallout 4 coming out in a week.
Yes.
So that's gonna be interesting. And then it's you got Call of Duty coming out.
I don't care about Call of Duty.
So
it's all Fallout. It's all Fallout.
All those all those casual gamers are gonna be all about Call of Duty.
Yeah, and let me encourage all you football fans who love to play games, go check out Conan O'Brien and Marshawn Lynch playing Call of Duty. That is hilarious.
Yeah, we know Marshawn Lynch is a big Call of Duty guy. So, I mean, Marshawn Lynch will just be on anything.
I rest my case about Call of Duty. Though I'm actually excited. I'm excited for the new Tomb Raider game too. I just don't know when I'll get around to finally playing it. I still haven't even played the new Metal Gear Solid game. I'm way behind.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can get the new Halo 5 game pretty soon. I don't play the multiplayer, so all the crap about the people complaining about the split screen, whatever. But anyway, yeah, I mean, if technically our Wrestling the Max show is now old. That Raw that's on there is from last week, but hey, we have a WWE 2K16 review if you want to check that out. You know, if you're again talking about video games and still talking about the NXT and TNA and ROH that was still going on from this week, or you could just listen to hear that Paul just disappears halfway through because he fell asleep. So that's something you can listen to too. So. Now I need to fall asleep once, so we can all have our turn. Or we
yeah.
But yeah, so you can listen to that, and we didn't have a co-op multi because of all the internet issues. That will be rectified this week too. So, all right. Well, until Friday, we'll see you later.